Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host, and we are off on time as far as the time. We're a little bit late, about an hour late. Our guest still has not shown up. We're waiting for him, Trey Hudson. I've got someone on the line, a good friend, and who at the last minute I said, help. He's driving, but at least we'll get a conversation going. And I have to tell you, though, if anyone would like to be on our mailing list. It's a once a week newsletter, and I only send it out once a week. But if there's any changes with the show, like for instance, this week changed the day and actually changed the time by 1 hour. That was a last minute thing, though. But whenever there's changes, you'll get this once a week email newsletter that just has the guest and blog only. There's nothing else really there. It comes out once a week usually on Tuesday mornings. And it's very easy to sign up for that. Just go to podcastufo.com, and over on the sidebar, you'll see it'll say weekly newsletter. Just put your email address in that and confirm it, and that's it. During the break today, that is if the show will go on, or at some point, I'm going to be playing a real special treat. A friend of mine and longtime listener, Mark Stanley, out in California, beautiful voice, great musician. And he has a tune that he's done about Roswell. I think I played this quite a while ago at one time. He remastered it, and it's out, and it's called Out of the Sky. And it's a beautiful tune, and that will be coming up at some point. I did mention on one of the shows a few shows ago that if anyone would like to be on a 3-minute clip, please email me at martin@podcastufo.com. If you wanted to be on a 3-minute clip about your UFO sighting, just let me know. And so far, I have recorded a number of those, and they'll be coming up through shows in the future. But the one thing I will ask you is you just put the highlights of your UFO encounter. I'm getting these emails still, again, as I mentioned, a few other shows that are very, very lengthy, and just put the highlights in there, and I will return the email. I try to return every single email that I get. And if you're putting in real lengthy emails, it makes it really tough for me to read through the several emails I get a day for this show in particular. This week's blog by Charles Lear is called A UFO Landing at Holloman Air Force Base. And check that out. Another very good writing by Charles Lear. And over at YouTube, I have just posted a video that I recorded about a year and a half or so ago with Francis Chiramuda. He was one of the Ariel School witnesses, and it's a 7-minute clip. It's really great. He talks about his encounter, how it changed his life, and how he kind of questioned his memory and actually went through regression hypnotism to try to, see if these things really did happen and how he thought they happened. And he has a very clear memory of the beings and a very, very interesting witnessing to what happened and the sort of blinking in and out, which is very fascinating to me. So check that out. That's over at a YouTube channel. So for now, I still don't see our guest in the studio. I'm not sure exactly what happened. Hopefully everything is all right. But for now, he's driving somewhere in New York. Is Lee Speigel. Lee, thank you for joining me at last minute.
Well, it's my pleasure to always join you, even if I'm driving and having trailing multicolored lights coming behind me very rapidly.
Is it a triangle form like before?
Well, I can't really make out the shape. I've always wanted to see an actual circular flying saucer with a dome on top.
Yeah,
but I'll take whatever I can get.
That's right. Yeah. While we're and I really appreciate you filling in. For now, I'm not sure what's going to happen with this, but I do have some. I asked the people waiting in chat. They waited there, a lot of them, for over an hour, and so I said, "Hey, can you please post some questions?" And so a few of them did, and so I asked them to post them for me. But it's still, I would like to ask you this one in particular, because I know you did some work on this, and it's UFOs and Renaissance paintings. and that this person heard that it's symbolic of the sun and moon. And what's your opinion on those?
Well, just in terms of medieval or Renaissance paintings in general, I've always been of the idea or the opinion that there's so many paintings that came out at different time periods, and many of these paintings depicted either like the Virgin Mary or the baby Jesus or John the Baptist. And for some reason, many artists decided that they were also going to include something else in these paintings that by our standards today could only be interpreted as UFOs or UAPs. And that's always been a fascinating thing to me. They wouldn't just paint the sun or the moon and the sky above events that were happening. They actually painted things that were primarily circular, sometimes with a dome on it, and emitting beams of light going in different directions. Like, why? Why would the artist have included these kinds of objects? And usually the normal explanation is, well, it must be some kind of religious symbolism of the time. Really? Now, what possible religious symbolism could it be? Because in one famous painting, which is one of my favorites, a UFO or something is in the sky shooting a beam of light down to, I believe it's the Mother Mary holding a baby.
Yes.
And to the right of the picture of the painting, you can see in the distance a man and his dog, and they're looking up at the sky. Obviously, they're looking at this thing in the sky, and not only is the man kind of excited about it, but so is the dog. I mean, really, does that fall under the category of religious symbolism? Boy, I doubt that, Martin.
Yes, I know that when I first started looking into this topic, basically, that was one of the things that really fascinated me. And I do remember there was a 2 or 3 part series on YouTube where there was a guy that was claiming he was debunking these. And I can't remember if he said I can't remember the exact symbols that he was saying these things represented. But he was saying that he totally debunked it. Did you ever watch any of those videos?
No, I don't think I've seen those videos, although it's possible that I've seen them in passing. Years ago, when I was a writer for the Huffington Post, I decided to do a story around Christmas time, and writing about some of these actual paintings, and I decided to interview someone in the New York, I believe the Archdiocese. He was kind of high up in the religious circle in New York City, and I wanted to get his sense of what does the church think about these things, and he wasn't terribly forthcoming, and kept getting back to there must be some kind of very highly sophisticated religious symbolism that the painter wanted to get across the angels of the Lord and the Lord himself. And when I kept pushing the idea that maybe these weren't religious symbolisms at all, that maybe there was something more to it that has something to do with modern day UFOs, and the guy practically hung up on me. Huh. In fact, when I was done with the interview and we published the story, after it came out in the Huff Post, I heard from this man, and he asked me to eliminate certain parts of the story that were quotes from him that he decided didn't put him in a really friendly light. And I told him it was too late to do that. He should have said that to me while we were still in the interview if he had some concerns. And I didn't retract those statements because that probably wouldn't have made me look good to the readers. I wanted those statements to stand as they were. If other people think that there's nothing to this UFO thing going back in time, then fine. That's your opinion, but it's my opinion, that they're wrong, and I'll stand by that. And I've never really had anybody come back to me with any kind of threats or lawsuits or anything like that. And so I felt in my right to do that. All of these things. My friend Jacques Vallée, the astrophysicist, he wrote a really wonderful book a few years ago called, what was it called? In the Sky. Windows in the Sky. Oh, you'll hate me for forgetting the title of it. But Wonders in the Sky. And basically, he took the idea that UFOs have been around humankind for a very long time. And he wanted to take the idea of starting with the Industrial Revolution historically and moving backwards in time when there should not have been any kind of vehicles of any kind in the skies. And lo and behold, they found many, many examples where not only were citizens seeing and reporting UFOs, or they weren't calling them UFOs back in the days of the Bible, but there were many, many cases where the scientists of different periods in history, the scientists of different countries who were considered very smart people, they were also investigating these strange things in the skies and reporting them to the leaders of different countries. So this has been going on for a long time. And in very few cases did those scientists come up with a reason of saying, well, it must be just religious symbolism. This couldn't possibly be something that's made up of, metal pieces and anything like that. This has been going on a long time, Martin. The whole idea of religious symbolism is, I believe, the kind of thing that really that many scientists today still stick with. And it's kind of, I think, it's not good for the subject. It's not good for people who've been ridiculed for many years, who have reported having sightings or encounters with something that can't be explained. That ridicule factor is almost, I hope, gone. But these old paintings, they're great. And I think if any of your listeners, Martin, really want to take a good look at them, all you got to do is just do a simple Google search for something like UFOs in art of the Renaissance or medieval UFOs in paintings. You'll find a ton of stuff. I mean, really good stuff to look at.
Yeah, there's a lot. And yeah, I mean, that was one of the most fascinating things, when I first started looking into this, because I'm very much into art and everything. And I've never seen a painting in person in any place I've ever done an appraisal or anything like that. Or I've never been in a museum where I've seen a painting that had anything in the sky like that. But when I started seeing, these real paintings, from way back then, it just fascinated me. I've got another question up here, and I am communicating with the guest, and so I'm going to pose this question to you, Lee, and then I just have to type to the guest. That's
okay.
He's not. He has somehow, even though I keep saying Eastern time, he's somehow got the time zone mixed up. So, okay, so I am going to just pop myself out. But Lee, here's the question here. Do changing descriptions of UFOs and occupants by decade mean it's more mental than physical? That's the question. And I'm going to pop myself out here for a minute. And you're on your own, Lee, on that.
Do the changes of the descriptions mean more mental or physical? Well, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think so. I think that there have been different shapes of UFOs through history. I would prefer to think that perhaps, I believe that we are being visited. Earth is being visited by something or someone. And in 1968, the United States Air Force told their Air Force cadet academies in a chapter called Unidentified Flying Objects in one of their science textbooks. They told their cadets, this was not published material, but they wanted their cadets to get a good opinion of what the Air Force was thinking about UFOs back in 1968. And they said to the cadets that humans have been interacting with and encountering UFOs for almost 50,000 years. And they said to the cadets, and this is almost a quote, we're left with the unpleasant possibility that some UFOs could be intelligently controlled vehicles by intelligent groups of aliens or extraterrestrials, perhaps 3 or 4 different groups of extraterrestrials at different stages of development. Wow. And you read something like that and you have to figure, okay, if some UFOs are different aliens or extraterrestrials from different places at different stages of development, well, I would suspect they would have different kinds of vehicles. There you go. I mean, not everybody has the same kind of cars or vehicles, but imagine extraterrestrials having different kinds of craft that get them from one place to another. How's that for a possible answer to the question?
That's very interesting. Here's another like side note to that as well. I wonder if it's possible that intelligent beings that are, if that's what it is that's traveling here, wherever they're coming from,
right,
if they communicate between each other, hey, you should check out this little blue ball over here, that type of thing. Lee, it looks like my guest has just come in.
All right.
So you fulfilled your duty, and now you can pay attention to the road.
Well, and luckily it's not too late.
Yeah. Yes. Right.
Well,
all right.
Thank you for having me on, Martin.
You bet, Lee. It's always a pleasure. Always fun talking to you, whether we're talking online or not, but always great.
Right back at you. Thanks.
All right. You take care.
Bye.
All right. Here's my guest. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And sorry, I guess we got a little mixed up on our time, but we're all set now. So here we are.
Okay.
And so you have quite a background. And Trey Hudson, you like James Hudson or Trey Hudson?
Trey is just as good as anything else.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, thank you I know you had to scurry once you saw my emails.
Yeah.
So, but thank you for that. And so let's hear a little bit about your background.
Well, I was hatched out of an egg, and no, I'm kidding. I was, a traditional birthing experience for both my mother and myself. Grew up in Atlanta, child of the 70s. I grew up watching some of the wonderful TV shows that dealt with the paranormal back in the 70s. In Search Of, which was a fantastic show with the late great Leonard Nimoy.
Right.
Project UFO, which was a CBS dramatization of some of the Blue Book files, and was exposed to this stuff very early. And you grew up, became an Eagle Scout, did a lot of stuff, a lot of adventure stuff all over the country. Went to school, had a unique opportunity to study psychology at the University of West Georgia, who had the wonderful Bill Roll. Dr. William Roll was on staff there when I was there. So I got to study under William Roll, Mike Ahrens, who was a student of Abraham Maslow, and some other folks. And unfortunately, when I graduated college, I had the freight train of life staring me, right in the face. I was commissioned as a U.S. Army intelligence officer, and sent to the U.S. Army Reserve, spent 6 months at the U.S. Army Intelligence Center and School, and popped out at the end of that process as an all-source intelligence officer. Got injured early in my military career. I'm a disabled veteran, went to go work for the Department of Defense as a security specialist, and I've been doing that for about 30 years. Had an opportunity in 2007, let me back up, 2008, to join a local paranormal group. So I joined the Oxford Paranormal Society as a investigator, and the founders of that organization decided to back away from paranormal investigation. They had pretty much had enough of it and were, a little, wanting to go elsewhere in their life. And they handed me this organization, this TAPS affiliated paranormal group. So that being the case, I took over, and it led to this amazing discovery, which resulted in the book I wrote.
I kind of heard, I listened to a really nice podcast that someone did with you, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was really well done. And it seems to me that you did this, like this geo searching, like hide and seek thing. So can you explain how that is fascinating, and how that all happened?
Geocaching, which is basically a game, an online game where you post geographical coordinates, and people will search for small treasure boxes. And so I had set up one of these geocaches in a local, not local to me, but a nature preserve. And I started noticing people's comments. And one of the comments that a searcher said is they had encountered locals that described to them a haunted road, near where this geocache was. And it was like, you don't go down that haunted road. Them haints will get you, and you don't ever be found there after sunset. You're sure to die. Well, of course, that's like waving a red flag in front of me. Hell yeah, that's where I'm going. Absolutely. I'm that guy. And so I started, trying to get a team together to research this haunted road. And just, as the way life is, sometimes you stumble across things that you never expected to find. And one of the unique things that we found that had nothing to do with a haunted road was the meadow, was the location that we've been investigating and researching since 2016. And it was just one of those, unique serendipitous kind of things that fall into your lap that just turns out to be truly remarkable and life-changing.
And so I understand something happened during camping back at the camp. You were out looking around or whatever. And can you give those details?
Oh yeah, absolutely. While we were researching the haunted road, one of my team members who was minding camp had drank a lot of coffee that cold February night. It was quite drizzly and rainy, and as happens with guys when they drink too much coffee when they're camping, that coffee has to eventually go somewhere. So he had stepped behind the campsite to take care of this pressing biological piece of business. And once he got done, he's looking up in the sky and he sees the moon come out. And as I said earlier, it was a cold, drizzly, rainy, just really icky night. And right before the moon came out, he saw a shaft of lightning, a bolt of lightning, which strangely enough had no sound. Very odd. But he was more focused on the moon because he thought maybe this clouds were clearing off and it was going to be a much, much nicer, enjoyable evening. And then the moon started moving sideways. Yeah, in this area, the moon doesn't move sideways. Usually it tracks east to west like it does everywhere else. So it moving from his right side to his left side was quite remarkable. And while he's watching that, the moon, or this what now turned out to be a luminescent orb, stopped, and a small pinpoint of darkness appeared in the middle, and it grew larger and larger and larger until it completely blotted out this this orb. And it turned out to be a remarkable UAP sighting, truly remarkable. And so it's like, well, forget that haunted road business. I'm not going to waste my time with that anymore. I think I found somewhere really cool. And about a quarter of a mile from our campsite was a field. And we decided to start focusing our investigative and research on this field, primarily because it's a wide open space. Anything that moves across it, we can see the tracks of it, like a cryptid. This area has a history of cryptids and Bigfoot. We can set up our teams at night with night vision and thermal. Anything moves across, once again, we can see. And also it has a broad expanse of open sky, so we can also watch the sky. So this meadow or this field became the focus of our research, and that's where some of the truly remarkable things happened.
And we'll go through some of those remarkable things as we go along. But this topic, I know part of your book discusses, all the odd places there are in the country and also overseas as well. Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, we can always, more people know about Skinwalker Ranch from, of course, it was on the History Channel's
Sure.
Two seasons on that so far. And so the Skinwalker Ranch, all these strange things happen. And, I do get a lot of listeners, but just real quickly, if you could, just for the new listener that may have not heard of Skinwalker Ranch, I know you've looked into all these places, and in a nutshell, if you can give the listener what goes on in that place. I've read
Yes.
the book too. That was a great book that George Knapp and I forget who the other person did together.
Skinwalker Ranch is a ranch in the Uinta Valley in Utah, outside of Vernal, Utah. And it has a history going back many, many years, all the way back to the Ute tribe, of being a place that was cursed or forbidden. Something went on there, which ties back into their Skinwalker mythology, and folklore, that evil skinwalkers, which were evil shaman, worked in that area. And if you fast forward back to the 90s, a family that had bought the ranch started noticing just a whole plethora of very strange and unusual circumstances. UFOs, cryptids, what appeared to be portals, boxes flying through the air, strange box-shaped UFOs, and just this whole plethora of things that really don't fit into the cryptid or Bigfoot box. They don't really fit into the paranormal or ghost box. And they also don't fit into the traditional UFO research box. It was kind of all of these strange phenomena going on. And what was really interesting is I was at a conference in Nevada in June. And if you remember in the beginning of George Knapp's book, he talks about a ranch in Colorado that had very similar instances going on.
Yeah.
And if I have it here, I was actually lucky enough to find somebody that personally knows Dr. Leo Sprinkle when he was alive, and actually had some of these experiences on the ranch. And I got the report, Dr. Sprinkle's complete report, unredacted, for that ranch. And the person that gave me this sought me out, and she said, everything that you talk about in your book is similar to the stuff that happened at our ranch in Colorado. So we've got, the ranch in Colorado, we've got the Skinwalker Ranch, and now we have the Meadow. And one of the really unique things is boxes or cubes are very prevalent in these sites. Something about, the geometrical shape of a box or a cube. So
are you talking about like UFO craft or whatever it is in that shape?
Yes and no. In our situation, it was a portal that thermally showed up as a box or a cube. At this ranch in Utah, they had boxes that would sit on the ground and blink and make noise. They had in Colorado a incident of a person reported that a Sasquatch or cryptid touched the box and was paralyzed. They witnessed that. And then you go to a Skinwalker Ranch where they had boxes flying around with blinking lights. They called them flying refrigerators. If you turn the page and go to some of the UFO reports in Brazil, they had something they called the chupa chupas, which were flying boxes that would emit rays that would paralyze and incapacitate people. So it's just, it's really neat. I'm starting to see a lot of commonalities in these sites. And actually tomorrow evening, I have a Zoom meeting with other folks in this field. And we're going to start comparing notes and see if we can start coming up with certain indicators that could possibly point to further and more unique sites that have yet to be discovered.
That is so fascinating. I have a friend who was at a university in Massachusetts, and he and some people with him all witnessed a box shape craft with blinking lights.
Yep. Well, there you go. Exactly. And I don't know if you watched the Skinwalker Ranch TV show at all.
I have a little bit, yeah.
There was actually a instance, and I can't remember exactly when, but there was an instance where they witnessed a gold rectangular box.
No, I did not see that one.
So
wow.
Once again, here's this box.
Yeah. And this is something that comes up every now and then, is the aerodynamics. I don't think whatever it is that is traveling needs any aerodynamic at all, because first of all, when these things take off at supersonic speed, there's never a sound barrier broken or anything like that. And another thing is there's some people that have seen like triangles and other crafts, whatever they are, in that shape, but on their side and traveling just fine.
Right. And if you go to the DoD report that just came out, the Tic Tac and some other things were moving in non-ballistic patterns, ways, right angles at extreme speeds, things that a normal aircraft. So our understanding of three-dimensional Euclidean aerodynamics and aeronautical engineering just doesn't apply to these things. It's that thinking's right off the table for them.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I guess the question, I know we're going to get into more details and all that, but it's always fascinating to me, and has been since I very first started looking into this topic. And that's why are there hotspots, and what does that mean? Is this, you mentioned the word portal, is that what it is? Is it, and these are, of course, I'm asking you to speculate.
Oh,
but,
sure.
Are these things where possibly there's another dimension portal, or because of the blinking in and out you hear about and all this stuff? I mean, what's your guess? I guess is what I'm going to ask.
That is a great and legitimate question. I think it's dimensional for several reasons. One reason I think it is because in our experiences with the portal or cubes that we experienced, we actually were able to dispatch a team into it, into this cube, and they disappeared.
What?
Yeah, they disappeared, and we're watching them on FLIR, on thermal, and their heat signatures just completely vanish. And so we had an after action review, or an AAR, that evening. And I asked the team members, I said, what was your experience? What was the experiential nature of your trip into this, the remnants of this box or cube? And they said when they went in there, they didn't encounter any encumbrances. There were no brambles, there were no bushes, briars, branches. They just walked into where this thing was. And they said it was very dark, almost like stepping inside of a velvet bag, just pitch black. And the temperature had dropped, which is interesting because we picked up the outline of it on our FLIR, on our thermals. We didn't actually see it with our naked eye. We saw the thermal image, the thermal indicators of it. When they came back out, they did encounter branches and briars and brambles and all that weren't there when they went in. So something about that geographical location that they occupied for that period of time had shifted somehow. It shifted out of our reality just a little bit, just enough to where it was a little bit colder, a little bit darker, and didn't have these encumbrances going in. So that makes me think, at least in our case, and perhaps in Skinwalker Ranch, Colorado Ranch, and others, that we're actually talking interdimensional or multiverse kind of things, that there are portals, doorways, wormholes, whatever you want to call it, that exist between realities. And whatever that other reality is probably beyond our ability to conceive it. And so one thing our team has been doing is looking for indicators or telltale signs, spikes in radiation, spikes in electromagnetic fields, decreases in temperature, things like that. And what we're seeing is there's a temperature indicator or a change in temperature, and there's tiny radiation spikes is what we've seen, which is also interesting because they've seen some tiny radiation spikes also out in the Uinta Valley there at Skinwalker Ranch.
All right, so let's talk about, so this team goes into perhaps a portal or whatever it is they went. Now you're detecting through infrared this cube shape, possibly portal. They go into it. They experience that there's no brush or anything, no encumbrances, maybe a temperature change or something like that. But what else? I mean, first of all, what was their state of mind like when they went in, and when they disappeared? Did things around them disappear, and how did they get back? Just walking out?
Yeah, good point. They just walked in and walked out. It was, like I said, it was very dark. So from their perspective, they just walked into an area that appeared to be dark, just very dark, and a little colder. Didn't, nothing very, strange or spooky. And then they turned around and walked out. Now on our FLIR, we see them walk up to almost a line of demarcation. They drop off of our FLIR equipment, no heat signature, and then we see them coming back out of it. So, from their perspective, it was, not too terribly remarkable, but you combine it with the footage that we had on our FLIR. It was, as far as I know, the only known film footage this kind of phenomena that I'm aware of.
And is this film footage exists somewhere? You have this?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. And are you sharing it?
It has been, I have shared it at a few conferences, and I've got some contractual obligations where I'm not really able to share it widespread to the public quite yet. But yeah, I mean, the people that have seen it, for example, Jimmy Church has seen it, and he was, just wowed by it. Some other folks have seen it. I can send you a link to it here soon.
I won't share it. I understand what you're talking about.
And it's just really unique. So, my background, like I said, primarily is a paranormal investigator. That's kind of, that's kind of where I earn my spurs, if you will. And I've since become a MUFON field investigator and other things. But, I kind of look at things through that paranormal optic. So we decided we were going to do something called the Estes Protocol there in the Meadow. And that's where you take a ghost box, and I'm sure you and your audience have seen those on television, throughout the years. Except we take a person and we blindfold them, and we put earmuffs on them, and the ghost box audio comes into their earmuffs, and they can't hear anything going on outside. So they're blindfolded. They have no relationship to their outside stimuli at all. And you ask questions, and their instructions are whatever intelligible word they hear come through the ghost box, they repeat it. So if they hear rutabaga, as silly as that sounds, they just repeat rutabaga. And we did that in the Meadow, and we were able to engage what we feel like was a two-way conversation with an entity. And strangely enough, this entity became quite agitated when we started really drilling down to the phenomenology of the portals, electromagnetism, radiation, microgravities, things like that. And I can send you the link to that also for that video.
Wow, very, very interesting. And I understand because of what we know happened to Skinwalker Ranch, once a location like this is identified, that they had to have security there full time because people from all over the country and other parts of the world are trying to get into Skinwalker Ranch for themselves constantly. So I also understand that you're not disclosing this location for that very purpose and to keep things more on the pure side of your work. But I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
When you're getting all this amazing information and what sounds like evidence to me, what about scientists? What about contacting them and saying, hey, look, you want to really study something very, very unusual, come study this. And I know it's awful hard to get scientists involved in anything unless there's funding and all that. But I mean, this is something remarkable sounding to me.
Yeah, and that's a good question. And you did hit on it, funding. They're a scientist, especially, one that, receives various grants to do research. They live on grants. I mean, that's right. That's how they're paid. And we're self-funded. We receive no grants or, funding from any outside source. We don't have a, benefactor like Robert Bigelow, giving us a blank check. Hey, Robert, if you're hearing, I'll give you my address to send the blank check. Yeah. I'll send you my PayPal data. But, so it's a little difficult. Now, we did have a physicist on our team, and unfortunately he passed away last year, but he was our hard science guy. And he and I were working on developing some experiments that had to do with microgravities and time, trying to come up with ways that we could develop field deployable experiments where we could measure microgravities and small shifts in time.
Have you ever thought of contacting the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, SCU?
I'm a member of SCU.
Oh my goodness! Well, there goes that. So that's exactly what I was going to. Talk to you about it. That sounds like a really good place for you to be, and for this to be taken serious. And there's some really good people involved in that group. Yeah. That's great. I'm glad to hear that. Very glad to hear that. There was a question in chat I thought was pretty decent. Oh yes, when they got inside that, whatever it was that could have been a portal, whatever it was, and they shine their flashlights around, Did they see anything? This is from Richard. Thank you,
Richard C. Yeah. Well, Richard, what it was is when they got in there and we were, running headlamps and night vision, is it was just really dark. And I know if you've been in a really dark area where you shine your light and it's just like almost absorbed, it's that like being inside of a black velvet bag. It was just very, very dark. And I'm going to use the word oppressive, but I don't mean that in a negative way. It was just a very heavy feeling. But, that was one thing that they remarked is just how dark it was. It was almost like a velvet curtain had been dropped around them. And it was just, just absolutely pitch black.
I wonder, I wonder if it's possible that these people that went in there were somehow observed on another side or another dimension.
That's always been kind of the weird, question is, do you have some other group in another dimension setting up their equipment and saying, oh my goodness, these entities just, popped out of nowhere. They're getting all geeked out and, now they're on a radio show in their dimension, is talking about, these geeky creatures that, popped out of their dimension and wandered around and vanished again.
Yeah, right. I had a UFO encounter, but I also had, before that, I had a very weird, and I've always been reluctant to call it a ghost, but I had just plain unexplainable things happen in a house.
Sure.
And I've always thought, could it have been something from another dimension or something like that? It doesn't make any sense. It was more like a poltergeist thing. So like a door slamming and that was impossible for it to happen and, things like that.
Well,
but
oh, sorry.
No, it's just, it always makes me wonder if these things, maybe that would clear up a lot of questions about when people are saying they're seeing ghosts. I don't know.
That's an excellent point because, researchers of the paranormal, and I use that as a very broad term, paranormal outside of normal, be it cryptids, UFOs, ghosts, or whatever. They have a tendency, like we all do as human beings, to look at things through our particular optics. One of the things that we also have on film are heat signatures, entities, about 6 foot tall, 24 inches wide. They would shrink, they would get larger, they would split, turn into two entities, go back into one. It was kind of weird. But so we're filming this. So if I'm a ufologist and I'm looking at that, I'm like, well, those are ETs, or a ghost researcher would look at that and say, well, those are ghosts. A cryptid researcher would say, well, that must be the heat signature of a cryptid. Well, how about just saying, I don't know what in the heck it was. It was very cool and very neat, and I'm glad we captured it on film. And let's just live in the experience and accept the data for what it is and try to be very careful about labeling it. So I always wonder, people that have ghost experiences, and I have had things move around my house since I started researching this facility or this area. Maybe they're all facets of the same diamond. Maybe they're all, different tracks on the same LP.
Very well could be. Yeah, it's fascinating. And, and it's also to ponder, the show is basically based on UFOs, but to ponder that, perhaps some of these things in our airspace are from another dimension, possibly, and maybe perhaps some of them are other intelligence from other planets. It's
right.
It's it could be a multiple. Like I think that's what Jacques Vallée claims. He thinks it is like a multiple of things.
Well, Jacques Vallée, Brad Steiger, John Keel, John Keel used the term ultra-terrestrials. I've kind of, gone one step further. I call them paradimensionals. They're outside of our dimension. They're paradimensionals. And I think they're all, we're all looking at, the blind men describing an elephant. One guy holds a trunk and says, it's elephant's like a snake. The other one has a leg and say, it's like a tree trunk. And the other one has a tail and says, it's bristly like a broom. They're all describing an elephant, albeit from different perspectives.
How about that? That's really a good way to put it. So this question here, and I believe you did say yes. You have seen, the question is from Foreshore. Have you seen any weird creatures in the meadow
Yeah, absolutely. My teammates. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I
besides them? Yeah.
besides those weirdos. No, I mean we've seen uh, entities, and that's what I'm going to call them because I don't know what they were. They were heat signatures that seemed to be watching us. We have FLIR footage of a large, broad-shouldered, hulking uh, creature of some sort, which strangely enough was colder than its surroundings.
Ah,
We had a white humanoid, Bigfoot, if you will, type creature watching our campsite one evening. We have reports of shadow figures running across roadways, several instances of that. So, absolutely, we've seen all kinds of weird creatures and entities. And this
now,
area is just, it has a really rich folklore, going back, years and years and years of these kind of phenomena.
now, is do you have like a sort of a square mile area of where these things are happening? Have you, besides the, I don't know what that
Well,
noise was.
that was somebody trying to call me.
Oh, okay. Like, have you mapped out, like you said, the meadow, the field? But I mean, is there things happening within the outside area of this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The meadow is probably 4 acres,
Mm-hmm.
and so we've even explored, several miles from there, and have had remarkable, bizarre experiences happen there. There's a lake about 3 miles from there. That when I started really digging down into the BFRO files for cryptids and the MUFON files for UFOs, I started finding phenomena reported at this lake, and we videotaped UFOs, at this lake. So it is a very the region is very strange, very weird, and about the first 25% of my book, I take it from a macro to a micro. I look at the broad multi-state area. I bring it into the region, then I bring it into the counties, then I bring it into this nature preserve, and then I drill right down to the meadow. So yeah, there's plenty of weirdness for everybody in this region, and it's also a kind of a tragic area. You've had murders and bodies found, and when I started really researching it, this is only about 50 miles from one of David Paulides' missing person clusters, which is kind of odd too.
Right. Wow. How populated is that area? And like from the meadow, where is the nearest like home?
Oh, it's in a huge nature preserve. I mean, it's massive. There's not a
Mhm.
home within probably 15 miles.
I see. Yeah. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you say you're in the SCU, are you and your team, are there people outside of your team that you're inviting to
Yes.
come study?
Absolutely. We invite various researchers. I had a PhD from MUFON that invited to come research with us. I had, and I don't know if you're familiar with Matthew Delph with Mountain Cryptids Research out of Virginia. He was a guest researcher. And we do have people come down and research with us. It's not my site. It's not my story. It's the world story. And the only thing that I ask is people sign a NDA, non-disclosure agreement. And the only thing that I restrict is the exact location, do not give the location away, because like you alluded to earlier with Skinwalker Ranch, is it got so bad they had to hire on-site security 24/7. And that would absolutely ruin any future research that we would hope to have at this site.
That's right. I totally get that. I did, since you mentioned MUFON a couple of times and that you're a field investigator, I wanted to announce that on I think it's November 5th, myself and a friend are going out to Phoenix and going to be filmed. I'm not really sure what happened.
I live in a rural area. It's probably my stinky internet.
Okay. All right. Well, we're back. So I'll start again November 5th through the 8th. My friend and I are going to Phoenix, and we're going to be in the MUFON boot camp, investigators boot
excellent.
camp. And I'm actually going to be filming, and we're going to actually do a show from there. I think it's Tuesday I want to say Tuesday the 8th of November. We're going to be doing a show right from Phoenix with the Phoenix MUFON, joined by Matthew Roberts, who lives there as well, a past guest that had an incredible story. He's going to be joining us there as well. So yeah, that'll be next month. That'll be very interesting and a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to that. And so in this area where these things happen, would you say that there's also like the old-fashioned UFOs besides the box-shaped ones, like discs or triangles or anything? Are those things also sighted there?
Yeah. There are historical sightings of almost like a in this area of a craft made up of like various prisms, like a crystalline kind of craft. Wow. There was various sightings of anomalous lights, like a category 1 sighting. There are quite a few sightings, which is very odd, of flashes and lights in the forest, which I've witnessed myself. Imagine somebody setting off a strobe light, deep in the forest, and how it would just illuminate, the forest. You might not see the source of the strobe, but you would see the illumination. I have personally seen that myself. Seen lights in the trees, orbs. Now, a ghost person would say those are orbs, or spirit lights. A ufologist would say those are, UFOs. A person who's a folklorist would say those are the fae or perhaps fairy. So, I think we're looking at the same phenomena. So, yeah, this area has a rich history and, pretty much all of that kind of stuff.
Was there ever, that you're aware of, was there ever any Native American population there?
Yes, absolutely.
And is there any sign of that, or is there any folklore or anything?
Yeah, there's some folklore. A lot of it was lost. Unfortunately, this area is in America's Southland, and a lot of the Native American population, First Nations population, was forcibly removed during the Trail of Tears. So, unfortunately, a lot of that folklore went with them and ended up out west. So you have to kind of crosswalk the folklore back, but there are some really interesting folkloric things in this area. They talk about the stone coat giants, which were giants that were impervious to arrows, much akin to Sasquatch. There's a particularly nasty witch type figure, folkloric figure called Spearfinger, who would eat the liver of travelers and kidnap children, and compare her to the Skinwalker shamans of the out west. So you see a lot of similarities in the folklore also.
And all right, if you don't go down the theory path that these things are, these areas are portals, then it kind of makes you wonder why there is such a thing as hotspots, where things happen.
Yeah, good question. I actually sat down and had a really interesting conversation with the researcher James Keenan, and he and I were talking about pictographs, Native American pictographs that have elements that look like portals or gateways, and you start seeing these things all throughout, the United States and other places. This particular ideogram, of a portal. What makes it interesting is there is a universal symbol that's the worldwide, and you might have heard of it, called the Galactic Keyhole, which is a keyhole-shaped, type symbol that has been found in the Middle East and various places, that usually corresponds with a sighting or somewhere that has the folklore or history of being a portal between worlds. There was a unique experience where we went out to the meadow, and there was a particular very tight geographical location. I'm talking like maybe 10 square meters, where we've had a lot of weird stuff happen. And lo and behold, on a small island in a creek, there was a 12-foot sapling that had the top of the sapling bent over and secured in an oval, almost like the top of an Ankh or Egyptian cross, which is another symbol for a portal. And we could not figure out how that particular anomaly was done to that sapling. You couldn't climb up it. The sapling was only about 2 inches in diameter. It was in the middle of a creek. You couldn't put a ladder up to it. So somehow this strange symbol appeared right at a place where we've had many strange things. And I personally had an extreme case of disorientation to the point where I almost might have been lost. I might have ended up as one of David Paulides' chapters. I got so disoriented. So, symbols, portals, they're all over the place, and who knows where the next one will be.
Right. Or maybe they change from one locale to another.
Could be transient.
This question I think is kind of a legitimate one. Is that someone trying to ring in on your phone there?
Yeah, I'm getting like tons of messages. I'll throw it back there.
Okay. So Mary Grace Kirby, longtime listener, she missed the first part. She wanted to know where the meadow is. I never even asked you the general location because I know you don't want to give the pinpoint.
I will give you the precise location of it. Everybody prepare to take notes. It is east of Arizona. It is east of Arizona and south of the Mason-Dixon line.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
I know No, I owe it to my teammates not to give the location, so I don't give the state or anything. All I'll tell people it is in America's Southland.
Wow. Well, and I do get why you're not saying the exact location. I'm not sure why you're afraid to say the state, but to me that wouldn't seem like that would really be giving much away. But I'm gonna, of course, honor that and not try to squeeze it out of you. But you yourself, have you actually camped there overnight?
That's a good question. We camped within about a quarter of a mile of it, and our last outing, which was in July, we had planned on camping there overnight, actually putting a team in there with their equipment. And unfortunately, the weather was so nasty, we were not able to put a team in the field. But that is on our on our agenda to actually put a team out there overnight. We've had some folks experience some pretty strange medical stuff, so there's a bit of concern about that. But we think we have the protocols in place that would make it reasonably safe for our team that's out there camping.
Right, and I mean, how about, I don't know what the road situation is there, but can you get a motorhome in there safely?
Oh, no.
Oh,
we actually literally all of our equipment and gear, we have to hike and pack it in about a quarter of a mile to the site.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
It would be, if you did have funding, like to say all of a sudden Bigelow happened to be listening to this podcast, which is probably about a 2% chance maybe, but just say he was, or someone passed it along to him. And he said, hey, I'm really interested in what you're doing. I'll be glad to fund you. But you're going to have to get, some type of unit in their house, like trailer unit in there or something. I mean, anything is possible if you throw enough money at it. Something could be brought in with a helicopter and dropped down or whatever, but you would need permissions, right? I mean, do you need permissions because this is
a public land?
Public land.
Yeah.
So that's where it gets really tricky if you try to do the same.
And we can't do any destructive testing. That's we have to be really careful and very respectful of that. We have to be good stewards of this unique area. And so our research has to be non-invasive, non-destructive. And we have to also understand, albeit we're probably not going to run into anybody else out there, but it's public land. It's, it doesn't belong to us. So we have to be respectful of that.
Right. Yeah, I could see where that could get really tricky. And however, if there's no pressure on you for releasing your videos or anything like that. I mean, you haven't heard from any branch of the government as far as what are you doing out on this land, or anything like that. I mean,
no, I work for the government.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I've asked myself that, so I guess no, I'm kidding. I do work for the government, but no, not really, which is really, I'm probably the only government guy that does not say my job has had anything to do with UFOs. Absolutely nothing at all. Not even remotely related to that kind of stuff. All of this stuff has been done on my own dime and on my own time. Haven't had anybody too terribly interested in it, which is kind of interesting because NIDS was partially funded by DIA and other agencies.
Right.
So who knows, what the future will bring, but nobody's expressed any real interest yet.
Let's talk about some of the, because I know you've really looked into this, some of the other hotspots in this country to start with. Besides, you mentioned Colorado, you mentioned Skinwalker Ranch. There are others, though. Is that right?
Yeah. Mesa Verde is one in Colorado. There were some experiments done that shows a slight shift in time, and I need to contact the scientist that was doing the experiment. I think it was involving a Doppler shift of lasers, but there was a slight difference of time in one point to another. Time ran differently.
That's strange.
Yeah,
wow.
That was weird. You have the haunted forest in Japan that has a lot of rich folklore. You have the and I'm going to butcher this, a Hoia-Baciu Forest in Romania. And I actually had a chance to talk to someone that went there, and she was telling me about some of their experiences. And it has a lot of the same, weird, strange type of phenomena too. So these areas, I think, are known. I think if you follow the folklore, you'll start to find them. If the knowledge hasn't been lost throughout the ages. And so I think the cool thing is, I'm just an average guy. I'm nobody special. I don't have any kind of tremendous insight. I'm inquisitive and I like to research. And, if I can do the research and follow the folklore and find one of these areas myself, what's to keep your listeners from doing it for themselves? It's out there that, this kind of phenomena is more prevalent than we realize. And these adventures are just out there for the taking.
That's right. In my area, I'm currently down in Massachusetts, but also live in Maine. But in this area, here we have the Bridgewater Triangle.
Oh yeah, very familiar with it.
A lot of things happen there, but it's not. But the only places I've heard of this sort of possible portal phenomenon are only what you're talking about today, what you've witnessed and your team has witnessed, and also the Skinwalker Ranch. I can't really think of any other place. Are you familiar with any other places that claim there may be some type of portal situation?
I've heard talk of some in Sedona.
That's another place where
a
lot of stuff goes on.
A lot of stuff goes on there. And, there's a running joke, the Sedona, one of the many Sedona portals is between the car dealership and the Starbucks, and I'm kidding, but, Sedona has a rich history of that. So I think there are, many of them out there. And I think people just, will stumble across them, or if they really start looking at some of the, the folklore, they'll find them themselves. I was, and I cannot remember it off the top of my mind, is there was a place that's a forest near a subdivision where people have experienced strange, things. So if you start really digging in, and every time somebody, reports they were walking through the forest and they were daydreaming and they don't remember how they got to the end of the trail, were they daydreaming or do they have missing time because they passed through one of these portals? So I think it actually might be a bit more common than we think.
Wow, that's interesting. We have this question up here from Jay Allen. He just wanted to know if you ever had any experiences during your U.S. Air Force time, like some of us have. In other words, he must have had some type of experience.
Don't call me an Air Force guy. I'm an Army guy. No, I'm kidding. No, I am an Army guy. No. Actually, my official life. No, it's been, mostly I'm a paper pusher and administrator. So, all my really cool stuff has happened extracurricular. That's a great question, though.
Yeah. And I don't think I've ever asked you, or did you mention how you got this interest in particular to start researching?
Yeah. We, like I said, I was exposed to it, as a young guy back in the '70s, watching these various TV shows, and I just, one of the really cool things that happened when I was younger is my dad, who traveled all over the country doing construction projects, was listening to a late night radio show, and there was a gentleman talking about his new book, and the gentleman was named Brad Steiger.
Yeah.
And Brad was talking about his new book, The Gods of Aquarius. And it intrigued my father. So he bought the book. Back then there was no Amazon. So he went to the bookstore and ordered it, and it finally came in, and he read it. And, just being the weird little maladaptive sponge that I was as a youth, I read the book. And, some of the stuff that Mr. Steiger talked about in there was the multifaceted aspect of anomalous phenomena. He talked about, UFOs and the tall whites. He didn't use that term, but the Nordics. And he talked about, Sasquatches and UFOs and, angelic apparitions and Marian apparitions and all of this. But he looked at them all through the same lens. So I thought, that's really kind of cool, that he's looking at these various phenomena as maybe part of a greater whole, a gestalt where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So that, that kind of primed the pump, if you will, for my interest in this kind of phenomena. Right.
Brad was a very nice man. I got the chance to interview him about a year before he passed away. And what an amazing guy he was. How many books? I forget. I can't remember how many he told me he wrote.
Yes, ridiculous.
Like hundreds or something. Yeah. Yeah, it's quite amazing. We're going to go into a break, and I'm going to share my friend's song that he sent to me. I think he sent it to me yesterday, but I had listened to it prior. But anyway, this is about Roswell, and my friend's name is Mark Stanley. We'll be right back right after this, and enjoy it.
Farm, there's a lightning storm, but there's another light in the sky that night, in the Roswell clay. When the sun came up that day, pieces of some machine no one had ever seen, and out of the sky it fell. In July it fell, but don't ever tell. Out of the sky it fell. And in the desert wind, as if it had never been, carried off somewhere what had once been there. Nothing left behind for anyone to find. Not a single trace left from this time and place. Out of the sky it fell. In July it fell, but don't ever tell. Out of the sky it fell. Secrets that they keep run so wide and deep. It was 60 years ago, but still there's so much we don't know. Sky fell.
That's a great song by Mark Stanley. So I'm back, and I'm with my guest Trey Hudson. And Trey, welcome back. Let's see, I got your mic muted. Sorry about that. So one of the things I was thinking about was the Rendlesham Forest. I mean, so we talk about the Rendlesham Forest incident, but we don't talk about the other things. For instance, there's still stuff going on today from accounts of people. I have someone I communicate with in Australia. They're friends with someone in that area, and they're saying there's crazy stuff going on there. Even now, we're talking cryptids, we're talking UFOs, and bizarre stuff. And speaking of that, you mentioned you were an Eagle Scout. So is Colonel Charles Hull. And that really kind of, to me, a lot of people don't really understand what an Eagle Scout is, but it's a major thing, and you have to be so dedicated. You have to live and breathe, and it's disciplinary to the max. And I think that kind of sets you up for the rest of your life and what you do, right? As far as
Yeah, you've got to be.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. It's it's a discipline thing. It's a focus, attention to detail, that kind of thing. So that's not only is the way I look at things, research wise, professionally. I'm in a type of job where it's very detail oriented, and when you go and you read the book, I've had some people say, well, it reads like a government report. Well, yeah, I'm a government guy. That's how I write. I'm sorry, but it's very matter of fact. And I don't want the reader, to be bullied into any kind of perception. You just read what happened and make up your own mind, and and take that for what it is. The officer, being an intelligence guy, all of that just kind of set the stage for me to be able to capture and articulate and eventually report some of these amazing happenings.
Now, speaking of your government job, has this extracurricular activity of yours ever affected what you do?
Absolutely not. Actually, I work with just say other agencies. That's all I'm going to say is I work with other agencies, and I was talking with an agent from one of those other agencies, and he's like, "Oh, wow, that's fascinating." So he bought a copy of the book to be autographed. So yeah, no, it's just, other than people thinking it's kind of interesting and cool, it hasn't impacted my job at all. I still have my clearance and all of that, so it's all good.
Yeah. And I guess this would probably kind of be a fitting question. How do you feel how the government has handled the UFO topic?
That's a good question. That's a fair question. Part of my training has been, how do you handle, maintain, and disseminate classified or secured information? Why is it classified? Why does it have to be kept secret? One thing that a lot of people are under the misconception that the government can't keep a secret. The government can keep a secret for a very, very long time. They've got professional people, and that's all they do is maintain these secrets. I think that for whatever reason, the scientific world, the act world, has taken the whole idea of UAPs and has pushed them over to the side. In general, there are some very specific agencies and groups that looked into some of the more fringe stuff. One of the things that comes to mind is the U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command back in the 80s, funding remote viewing research through the Stanford Research Institute. So, there are some elements in the government that are kind of digging this kind of weirdness. But I think for the most part, your hard scientists, especially in the areas of aeronautical engineering, aeronautical research, push UAPs over to the side. So turn the page. It has become so obvious, especially in this information age of the 21st century, that this type of information cannot be poo-pooed anymore. Look at the gimbal and the Go Fast videos. Those are some of the most advanced airframes in the sky. F-18 Hornets. You have naval aviators who themselves are aeronautical engineers. These airframes are equipped with some of the most sophisticated targeting, acquisition, and detection equipment, be it FLIR, radar, or whatever. And so here we have the absolute best publicly released video and evidence of UAPs. And I just think it's developed enough inertia over the years that they can't deny it anymore. And, people are demanding, are these things, from a near peer, be it China, Russia, or whomever, are they terrestrial? If they're not terrestrial, what in the heck are they? If we don't know what they are they dangerous? Can we defend against them? And so I think we're starting to see a very slow drip, drip, drip of disclosure, which I think is a very positive thing. And for whatever reason, the people that hold this information are metering it out very gingerly. People that are read into some of these areas, they sign very, very tight binding non-disclosure agreements. So some of the people that are coming out of that world, and I'm not going to name names, that are now discussing this stuff, I've got to think that they've been given authorization to discuss it, to start, needling out little bits of information. So I think it's a great time to be alive in the area of UFO research. Quite frankly, I never thought I'd see it in my lifetime,
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of cool, kind of groovy.
Yeah. I mean, for this to happen while I'm doing this show has been really quite amazing to see the change, in the last 3 or 4 years. And I've also, that being said, the audience has grown quite a bit, and which is really nice. And what's really nice is there's a lot of new people looking into that, and because of that, it will. I think will kind of get into a snowball effect of more people taking it serious.
And right, you mentioned Rich Hoffman, and SCU, very serious people, very serious, doing absolute yeoman's work, on some of these incidents. And, people are starting to take this very serious now. And it's not, it's not the fringe anymore. It's not, and I am not demeaning anybody, but it's not the person saying I was beamed up to Zeta Reticuli and was taken aboard the Galactic Federation mothership, and then these people give their story and they're poo-pooed and ridiculed. We're past that now. We're actually starting to look at this stuff very seriously, and people that have these amazing experiences and encounters are really being looked at in a more respectful, thank God, way. And those of us that have been researching this stuff are taken a bit more serious now. A real bellwether for me personally is there was a gentleman who was an engineer and a scientist that I have a lot of respect at worked in another department. And he came over to my office one day and he said, Trey, would you mind stepping outside? I want to talk to something, talk about you with something. And we stepped outside. I went to a gazebo adjacent to my building where I work. And he said, talk to me about this UFO stuff. He goes, I'm a scientist and I don't know what to think about it. What's your perception?
Huh.
And so, he and I talked about it, and I laid out kind of like what I did, with, the Go Fast, the gimbal, the Tic Tac videos, and, what they meant. And I said, only a fool would deny that we have some sort of craft, traveling at incredible speeds, moving in non-ballistic ways that probably are beyond the abilities of our near peer, and if near peers, China, Russia, countries like that. And if they were, it's not really conceivable that they would leap so far of us in technology that we wouldn't be prepared to at least recognize it when we saw it. So I said, an intelligent person such as yourself has to accept this. There's really no other, there's no other answer. And so for me, that was a real bellwether, a scientist and engineer that I respected, actually, stepping back, taking a bold tiptoe outside of his comfort zone, out of his box, and saying, maybe there is something to this.
Right. And, good for him. And it's also the thing, I bring up quite often too is, whoops, that went up by accident, is that when we talk about those 3 videos, we can focus just on that, but you can also tell that same person, people have been experiencing craft doing these incredible maneuvers and speeds, for 50, 60, 70 years.
Right.
It's not new.
No, it's not. The cool thing is this is, you know, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. This is the extraordinary evidence. This is undisputable, which just really makes it cool. But yeah, this stuff has been reported for generations. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, and I just hope that when the investigations start again, for the government, that they will at least hear some of the earlier cases, before 2004, because I guess that is the claim, that they're only going to investigate 2004 and forward. Maybe there's enough of them to investigate and all that, but they're saying that it's because of the technology is better. So I don't know if you heard that part.
Yeah, I think they would be doing themselves a great disservice if they didn't at least take a peek at some of the older cases.
Right. And speaking of older, you mentioned, we talked a little bit about the Native American possibilities of like hotspots, or that one in particular, the Meadow. Are you, and the transient part of it, are you aware of, I know this is kind of a bizarre thing to ask, but are you aware of any places that used to be hotspots that are no longer?
That's a good question. Not per se. These areas are they ebb and flow, at least in my experiences. Sometimes they're really super active, and then other times they're not. One of the things, if you go back and read some of the information you can get out there in the public with the NIDS research, is when they started bringing all of this technology and hard science stuff to it, the phenomena dried up. And we've discovered if we push too hard on this particular site, it'll dry up.
Isn't that something?
And we've also noticed that when we think we've got it nailed down, it'll surprise us. Like some of the most recent experiences we had were vehicles locking and unlocking themselves at our base camp about a quarter of a mile from the Meadow. And then I had one of my researchers on her way home in an adjacent state. So she drove, several hours to go back home, and her car lost all power, all electrics, everything. All electronics died on it. So we look in the literature, where have we seen vehicles completely dying before? So this is happening hundreds of miles away from this location. We've had strange downloads of information with some of our team members. I had a former Air Force Special Operations guy that had a very strange download of a particular term. And when we took this term and we translated it, it turned out to be Latin and Old English. And it translated into the children of the night goddess. So,
Whoa.
So what are like little children that come to you at night that have big heads, the grays, So, so this thing is constantly surprising us with this just rich tapestry of phenomena, and some of it just completely comes out of left field. We did the CE5 protocol, Dr. Greer's protocol, didn't see Doodly. And then that night, my team member gets a download. So, it's one of those things that just keeps surprising you.
How many people do you have, like, is your team members ebb and flow, or do you have like a certain amount of people on a team that show up there?
Yeah, we have probably about 10 team members, and we all have lives. So we might have 10 or 12 people on an expedition, and sometimes we might only have 4. So of course the number of people we can get out in the field really drives our abilities to research that particular outing. We hope to get an outing in 2 weeks, so we're trying to gear up for that.
Here's a question from Mary Grace again. Are hotspots more apt to happen where people are more open and curious?
I think so. I think people that are more attuned uh, are maybe more apt to recognize this phenomena versus people that aren't. You know, if you go through life with blinders on, you're not going to see the world. But if you take the blinders off, you're going to start seeing a whole lot of other things. So yeah, I think people that are more aware and more open will definitely start having these phenomena. Certainly.
Hmm. So, what about the things that you've personally witnessed there? Can you kind of go through a list of things? You mentioned you saw like orbs in a tree,
Mm-hmm.
and you were disorientated at one point.
Mm-hmm.
Can you? Well, first of all, can you describe what you mean by disorientated?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You know, we talked a little bit about my background. I'm an Eagle Scout, which means I've spent a lot of time in the woods. I've earned the Boy Scouts 50 miler award, which you get when you do 50 miles either on foot or by canoe. I've earned that 3 times.
Wow.
I was an Army intelligence officer. I've hunted big game in Africa and all over North America. So I'm really comfortable in the outdoors. You know, I've lived most of my life, you know, running around in the wilderness in one state or another. So all that being said, it's not to, you know, not to opine about my, you know, superhuman outdoors abilities. Just saying that I'm very comfortable in the outdoors and I know how to navigate and stuff like that. This particular area that we've been to, the Meadow, I've probably been to the Meadow 150 times, and it was an outing that had just a very few of us. We weren't able to get a complete complement of team members out there. So one of my team members and I decided that we would just go and take baseline reading, you know, radiation, electromagnetic, temperature, things like that during the day. You know, just basically a nice walk out in the woods in a beautiful location with a good friend. And we decided we were going to cross a creek to the north of the Meadow and explore the other side of it to see kind of what was over there. Well, I crossed the creek, and much to my surprise, I found another field or opening, you know, another meadow. It looked completely different. It was a new location, and I was very excited. And I, yelled over to my team member. I said, "Hey, Kristen, I found another field, another place for us to research. This is really cool." And she goes, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "No, I'm standing in this other field, you know, and it's going to be really cool. You know, we just have to cross the creek, but, you know, we need to start researching here." She goes, "Don't move. I'll be right there." And so I said, "Okay." So I put my boots back on where I'd crossed the creek, and I'm sitting there waiting for her. And she comes over and she goes, "Where are you, Trey?" And I said, "I'm in this new field." She goes, "No, you're not. You're in the meadow that we've been researching for the past few years." And I look around and I'm like, "No, we're not." She goes, "No, look at it. You're in a place you've been to 70 times." And God is my witness. As I sat there and I looked at the field, it almost changed. Is that my perception of it completely changed. And I was so confused and so disoriented that if I had not had a team member there, and we have a protocol that you never go out by yourself, you always have radio communications with base camp, you always have a map, compass, and GPS, so you won't get lost. You always have water and stuff with you. And if I had not been following our very strict safety protocols, I could have been so disoriented that I could have wandered off in another direction, thinking I was heading somewhere, and been completely lost and disappeared. And so I have to wonder, is that what happens to people that David Paulides writes about that just disappear? You know, they just are not there anymore, that they have this strange shift in their perception of where they're at. And it's so incredibly mind-blowingly disorientating that they get so confused that they wander off, or are they taken somewhere else? You know, do they step into a portal and for whatever reason they're not able to walk back out? The weird thing is the place where this disorientation happened was the same place where we saw that weird keyhole shaped shape on the sapling. Exact same location.
And what are that's really interesting. And what are some of the other things that you personally witnessed?
Well, I have personally witnessed these entities or these figures captured on FLIR. I have heard what can be described by some folks in the cryptid world as samurai chatter. Ron Moorhead talks a lot about it in his book, the Sierra Sounds. It's kind of a low murmuring off in the distance. I've heard that, which is has been tied by some folks to the tall whites, entities, or to Sasquatch. I have observed gifting. Like we had an incident where we had a stick woven in somebody's pack straps during the night while we were researching. And there's a photograph of that in the book. These strange cubes, I've seen those on FLIR. We had a almost like a woman in black kind of experience, which was very strange. A businesswoman appearing in the middle of the woods, in the wintertime, dressed in slacks, loafers, and a blazer, trying to get us to distract us from what we were doing. So, it's very typical man in black kind of stuff. I witnessed that personally, and I'm just looking through my list here, and let's see what else. The download, I interviewed the guy when he had the download of the strange words. I was there at the SD session. I was actually the one doing the questioning. I've seen numerous vehicles lock themselves, unlock themselves. I've seen strange lights in the trees and orbs. So yeah, just a whole bunch of stuff, and that's just me personally.
Yeah, and as far as the UFOs go, there.
Oh, yeah, and UFOs. Yeah, I've seen those too.
You have, yeah. And are there quite a bit of sightings there?
That's a good question. We are just now starting to expand our research to do more skywatch. That hasn't been something we've been doing a whole lot of in the past. So, I do have some video of, some pretty neat UAPs. And so we hope to start trying to film that, and I'll look at that in the future. Unfortunately, you start having too many phenomena and too few team members to research it. So you have to kind of pick and choose, what you're going to look for on a particular outing.
I see. Yeah. And one of the things you always hear about is the filming. We don't really, there's no real good films of UFOs, or there are, and some of them are CGI and stuff like that. Yeah. Do you have what you consider really good footage?
No, not really. Just from being in the field, that a lot of the films are strange lights in the sky, or some sort of object in the sky. And so what I did is, the film that we saw, which were lights in the sky at night, as I put on my field investigator hat. FI hat, and I started out, I went to Flight Radar 24, were there any aircraft in the vicinity? No, there were not. What were the ballistics of the objects? They were moving from high in the sky to low in the sky. An aircraft coming over the horizon would start low in the sky and go high in the sky. So it didn't match with an aircraft coming from below the horizon. What was the light pattern? The light pattern did not match any known light patterns of aircraft. I didn't see the anti-collision lights. I didn't see the red and green navigation lights. I didn't see, the strobing red light, anti-collision light. So, it was a UAP, an unidentified aerial phenomenon. What was it? I don't have a good solid picture of what it was, but it was enough to make me scratch my head and say,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'd like to share something because I was walking home last Friday night from a restaurant up in Maine, in the area where I live, in the Rockland, Maine area, and I had a sighting, but it was a drone. But also this thing was red, and then it got really bright, but I filmed it, and I was able to catch it on my way home. And I just want to show this and share this now. And just to let everyone know, this has been, I had Mark D'Antonio look at it, and a few other people, and it's definitely a drone. But at the time when I saw it, I kind of thought I was seeing a UFO, and I thought, wow, because I went over to take a look where it was, and the field where I thought it would have been, and there was no one over at the field. But anyway, here it goes. I'm going to play it now. What the? All right. Am I actually filming the UFO? What the heck? That's a light reflection, lens reflection or whatever. But that's not. Jeez. This is unbelievable. Those little things moving around, that's just the street lights and the lens. But this red thing, which turns white, is not. So, anyway, I just thought I'd share that because a lot of people would see that, and I thought I was actually seeing a UFO,
Mhm.
and it's still kind of a wild thing to watch, and it was extremely windy. You can hear it.
Mhm.
The wind was blowing really, really hard. I'm not really sure that would be optimal time to send a drone up or not, or why they'd send it up. And there's really nothing going on in the area. But anyway, I was told that was a drone. But that makes it tough for people that are. I mean, someone could post that on YouTube, which I did, and it took it right off as soon as that I found out for sure it was a drone.
Yeah, that's interesting. I fly drones, and I wouldn't have a drone up, at night in that kind of wind, and the lighting pattern doesn't look terribly drone light, especially with the really bright white light. That's kind of odd. So I guess that's one of the things. That's just a shoulder shrug. It's something flying around in the sky.
Yeah, and I that was just part of the footage. I looked earlier at the full footage, and there was a point where it get really bright white like that, and then went back to red. Do drones have lighting that does things, different lights like that?
Yeah, the ones that I fly usually have some sort of marker lights, but they're not real bright. They're just some lights out on the four corners, where your rotors are. The white light is what I find kind of odd. Is a white light would be for what purpose on a drone? Is it to illuminate something for the camera? The drone camera? Is it like a navigation light? Usually you're not supposed to fly drones, at night because it's, dangerous. So that's interesting. Unfortunately, it's one of those things that you'll probably never know exactly what that thing was.
Yeah. Well, I'm always careful. I have to be very careful because I do this show and I like to have really good integrity.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say everything I see is a UFO. So right off the bat, I said, this is probably a drone, but I just, it kind of freaked me out. And I was so glad because I've had, situations happen before where I try to get my camera out and can get it going. And then by the time I do it, whatever it is, and I'm not talking about UFOs, but other things, it's over, whatever it is. So I was really glad that I was able to catch that. But I thought the most puzzling thing of that was the bright light and also that the winds were extremely high that night. And I wouldn't think that I've never flown a drone, but I wouldn't think that would be such an optimal situation. High wind.
Some of the higher end drones are, much more stable, during high winds, but it can be kind of tricky.
Yeah. Okay. So I think this is going to, well, first of all, did I hear you say you do have a book? I don't remember
Yes.
where that's available. Is it Amazon and everywhere?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. It is probably the best way to find it is to go to Amazon to the search block and just type in my name, Trey Hudson, TreyHudson, common spelling. It's called the Meadow Project: Explorations into the South Skinwalker Ranch. And cool thing is, the ebook is I think $4.99. It's very reasonable.
Yeah.
if nothing else, it's worth spending a few bucks to take a look at. We also have it on audiobook, so if people want to listen to it while they're driving to and from work,
That's
we
always
have
nice.
it in soft cover and hardcover. So pretty much all of your various mediums there, it's available there on Amazon.
Right. And you did this through Flying Disc, Philip Mantle, who that's how we got connected. I think the world of him. He does a really nice job.
Oh yeah.
And so anyway, as he did once again, he picked a really good author. I really appreciate talking to you tonight.
Well, thank you for having me.
And
Glad we were
also,
able to get everything worked out.
oh yeah, me too. One last thing.
Sure.
How would people reach you if someone would like to reach you?
The best way to reach me is with a really long stick with a hook on the end. No, I'm kidding. The best way is on Facebook is Trey Hudson -author is my Facebook page, and then also you can go to the Oxford Paranormal Society group page there on Facebook, and so I pop in from time to time and opine about stuff that probably nobody cares about. But that's probably the best way to reach out there and touch base with me.
Excellent. Well, good luck with this meadow. I'm really fascinated by it, and if there are any breakthroughs, I would love to hear back from you.
Sure, absolutely. I will. I'll surely do it.
All right, Trey. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everyone. So that's it for this evening. Thank you so much for tuning in, especially with the time change and everything. I do appreciate that. Next week, we have Neil Nixon from the UK. He'll be on. And after that, I'll be traveling in out west on the West Coast in California. And hopefully, tentatively, on October 19th, I'll be sitting down at Stanford with Gary Nolan. That should be a really exciting show for that one. And thank you so much, everyone. And we will again see you next week. And as always, keep your eyes to the sky.